when I try to make these messages, I try to think who's watching and where you are in life and what you're doing right now. I can tell you the day that I'm taping this, which is Saturday morning, that most everybody's in quarantine. All around the United States, heavens, I think 1/3 of the globe is basically on lockdown at this point, trying to fight the coronavirus. And I think that means a lot of people are alone, or at least feeling isolated, are not feeling plugged into their normal day to day. There's got to be some degree of uncertainty with so many of you who watch these messages. So this morning, what seemed appropriate was brought to my mind by an email I got recently from a buddy of mine named Larry Burgess. And Larry was reading through Tom Wright, N.T. Wright's writings, and he reminded me of something that's outstanding. And to put it into context, I'd like to tell you that one of the hardest things for us to do in biblical study is to study large books all at once. Our tendency is to study a story, or to study a few verses, or to study a paragraph, or maybe even a chapter, or sometimes when we're feeling extravagant, maybe 3 chapters or so. But it's rare that we read a book from beginning to end in one setting, especially if it's one of the larger books. And when we fail to do that, we sometimes miss out on some extremely important messages, including one for us right now in the midst of all we're going through. Take the Gospel of Matthew. In Matthew, his gospel begins, he gives the genealogy of Jesus, but his gospel begins, and in chapter 1, the very first chapter, verse 23, as he explains the coming of Jesus, he quotes the Old Testament and quotes the passage from Isaiah 7:14, "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call him Emmanuel." Now, Matthew doesn't leave it there. Matthew tells us that Emmanuel is Hebrew, Immanuel, for God with us. So Matthew wants his readers to know at the beginning of his story that God is going to be with his people. This is prophetic. This is what Jesus himself was aware of because he was the fulfillment of that prophecy. Immanuel, Isaiah 7:14, God with us. Now, read the entire book of Matthew. And every story you read should be guided by that mantra. Every passage you read about Jesus should be guided by that mantra. God is with us. God is with us. Everything Jesus says, everything Jesus does, God is with us. And then you reach the very end of Matthew. And after you've read through 23 chapters and you get to that very last verse, the end of the book, Jesus has been crucified, he's been resurrected, he's walked with his apostles, he's getting ready to ascend and go back to the Father. And he says at the end of the book of Matthew the following: "Go out into all the world and preach the good news to everybody, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit," all Trinity, "teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold," and that word behold is a Greek word, idou. Matthew uses it to say, really pay attention here. It's like bold print. It's like loud voice. It's like double exclamation mark. It's like underlining, highlighting. All of the things that we do today is done in that word for Matthew, idou, and to emphasize something. So he says, and idou, pay attention here. Are you paying attention? Because these are the last words in the book of Matthew. The book starts out, Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us. Last words in the book of Matthew. Behold, idou, pay attention. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Now, what does that mean for me this morning in my quiet time? God's with us. God's with me. I can be self-quarantined in the most isolated place on earth. God's with me. Jesus is here. Physically present? No. Jesus wasn't telling his disciples he'd be physically present. But God is with us right here, right now. What a wonderful solace. So thank you, N.T. Wright. Thank you, Larry Burgess. God bless you guys.